Hello, NAFO fellas. My name is Yevgenia. I'm from the 69th Sniffing Brigade, and today we have an interview with a very special guest. Volodymyr Silenko is a colonel of Ukrainian Armed Forces and the commander of the 17th Army Corps. Volodymyr, please introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about your military background.
I am the commander of the 17th Army Corps, Colonel Silenko Volodymyr Mykolaievich. Before that, I was managing the 30th Separate Mechanized Brigade. I was appointed to the post on March 2, 2025. From that day on, I have been managing the 17th Army Corps, took part in its formation, training, and to this day, with the reception of the tone zone, we are working in the operational zone, conducting combat operations.
Could you also tell us about your military path? How did you join the army and what have you gone through during this time?
Those were the distant Soviet times. I graduated from a Soviet university, served in the Soviet Army. Then, when Ukraine became an independent state, I served in the armed forces of Ukraine in almost all command positions. In 2005, I retired from the armed forces due to length of service. But then, at the beginning of the war, I returned to the post of battalion commander from which I had retired. And then from the post of battalion commander, I held the post of deputy commander of a military unit, chief of staff, commander of a military unit, and now I am the corps commander.
In one of the interviews, you mentioned that you learn more from young military personnel. What can colonels like you, experienced military people, learn from those young guys who are like 20, 27 years old and are now being very talented commanders?
You see, if you compare the whole parallel of even my professional service, it is clear that the former Soviet Army differed from the modern one. In its majority, the number of people at that time, its provision, its responsibility. But at the moment, and this is already shown by the recent periods of our war, we are changing. The world is changing. The war is changing almost every week. And I think that young people, those who have a creative mind, those who deal with it, write programs, force, and make artificial intelligence work instead of a person, thereby freeing up the working shifts from 5 to 1 person, and a person there is on their own to get tired, to make mistakes, then the IQ of intelligence is millions of times higher. That is, young people are much faster, they are more progressive. I think that next to them you even perceive some actions, expressions, the whole dynamics of what is happening around you in a completely different way. Moreover, if you are fighting and are in such a circle of combat events, it even makes your work easier somewhere. I would assess it this way.
Could you name some of the young guys that you learned from during this time?
As for young people, for example, my subordinates who were my company commanders, platoon commanders, are already brigade commanders. They are progressive people, there are heroes of Ukraine, there are full cavaliers of the orders of Bohdan Khmelnytsky among them. For example, there is the current commander of the 66th Mechanized Brigade, Lieutenant Colonel Silovakin Rostislav Alexandrovich. This is my former company commander. He went through such a thorny combat path, has been involved from the first day of the full-scale invasion. Now, for probably a year, he has been commanding a mechanized brigade and commanding it successfully. This is Lieutenant Colonel Danilchuk, a hero of Ukraine. This is a battalion commander of the 30th Brigade. He is already the chief of staff of this military unit. His merit is the settlement of Sinkivka, the Kupiansk direction. He held it for a very long time. A lot depended on his skillful and correct actions. Well, in principle, you can talk about a lot of people. Volodya Shibka, the chief of staff of the 47th Magura Brigade, my former platoon commander. A lot of people.
Could you say that you have raised good commanders?
They grew up under my command. Very capable guys. Well, the cycle of war caught them. At first it was the ATO, then the full-scale invasion. Someone faced it as a company commander, someone as a battalion commander.
Lots of civilians are afraid to join the military because they say they do not believe they are going to be well prepared for the combat missions. You, as a commander of the 30th Brigade, were sending newcomers to additional trainings even before the basic one. Do you think that this is a good strategy to work with? Did it help the guys? And what trainings you were sending them to additionally?
Well, I think that the Corps will not affect this process in any way, because it is carried out centrally. Even when there were no Corps, it was determined by both the Commander-in-Chief and the Commander of the Land Forces. Such a system exists as a single one in the armed forces. After a serviceman has completed basic general military training, he arrives at a military unit. He has two paths. If he holds a position with a specialty where additional training is needed, then he goes to the unit training center for specialty training. If he does not need it, then this is what we call the 100th Higher Education Institution, the 103rd. This is an infantryman. Then military units that have training grounds have their own groups of instructors. Almost all of them have instructors. I mean, groups of instructors. Not all of them have training grounds. But there are some plots of land, if this is a combat zone. And there, the personnel are already directly adapting. According to the order, there should be an adaptation for up to 15 days. That is, to the conditions in which they arrived. It can be shortened from 5 to 7 days, depending on the situation on the front line. And each commander, respectively, prepares his personnel according to what combat conditions he is in. That is, for that terrain, for the performance of those tasks that will be assigned to the unit, whether it will be assault actions or defensive actions, search and strike actions, and so on. And, accordingly, to which unit this serviceman will belong. The specifics and essence of the unit's work are also important. Therefore, this part of the training of personnel after basic training is composed of these components.
What military specializations are now the most demanded for Army?
These are engineers, that is, simply put, sappers, although we are switching to robotic systems. But again, a robot is a robot, a soldier is a soldier, and it's very difficult now. Why are we switching to robotic systems? Because the robot goes and does the work for the serviceman. He won't do it as well as we would like, but we don't lose our personnel this way. Yes, any robotic system is a clear target for the enemy's FPV, both ours and theirs. Again, it doesn't work on its own. It's a human factor. It's again the terrain, the radio horizon, the range of the remote control. There are nuances, but nevertheless, we have now replaced them with robots, and fewer soldiers are dying. But there are exceptional cases when the human factor and a serviceman with this particular specialty, a sapper who has been training for a very long time, must work. Well, accordingly, a sniper. This is a profession. You know, very specific. It is very. It had to be corrected. Not everyone will work. UAV pilots. Well, I'm not talking about crews. There are crews of IFVs, tanks. This is a cast of people who need to be trained for about 6 months. But lately, you see, neither the enemy nor we use equipment, because everything relies on FPV, reconnaissance, and so on. And it's all instantly destroyed. And the enemy has now practically abandoned assaults on armored vehicles, on light armored vehicles. There may be some buggies, ATVs, motorcycles, and to move out from the depths and overcome a few kilometers in a short period of time. Then they dismount and again continue their actions. Something like that. Therefore, the scarce professions, first of all, are sapper engineers, UAVs, snipers. These are the ones on whom almost everything depends now. I mean the conduct of hostilities. Section commanders, of course, are the commanding staff, on whom the stability of the firing position depends in any position of a section of any observation post. We observed this in 2023, when there were still contract soldiers who stood and on whom the stability of our defense depended. That is, if he stood there and commanded, then even servicemen without combat experience were drawn to them. They were told what to do, how to do it. And all this happened with about 70 to 80% quality. And it worked like a litmus test when this experienced serviceman, with experience in work and command, was wounded. was killed. The position practically ceased to exist. Almost all of them are already mobilized. Again, returning to your question, this is a scarce position of a section commander, the main sergeant of the platoon. Almost everything depends on them. These are the people who conduct trench warfare. The platoon commander. If we take the officers, the platoon commander. Now, higher military educational institutions have a need for cadets for admission, but there are none. That is, now there is no competition for admission. That is, the military profession is becoming, you can't even find the right word, unpopular, unfashionable, dangerous, in that sense.
Якоюсь там небезпечною. В такому сенсі.
If you were asked to speak in front of school students to motivate them to enter high military educational institutions, how would you encourage them to do so?
Я в першу чергу поговорив би з їхніми батьками.
I would first talk to their parents, then to their teachers, and then I would talk to them. You see, a military person does not become a military person, but is born one. In Ukraine, it was once fashionable, once convenient, and once there was nowhere to go or just to get in. When the war started, everything became completely different.
Коли розпочалася війна, тут все стало зовсім по-іншому.
At what point and why exactly now did you start transitioning to this system? Why not earlier or not later? It's not a secret information that Ukrainian military often go to NATO countries to learn from their army. Time has passed. Ukrainians gained a lot of experience in modern warfare. What is something that Western military can learn from us?
Вони дуже стандартизовані.
They are very standardized. We even compare the training we gathered for individual training, corps commanders, deputies. We met with partners, they conducted classes with us, we discussed bilateral issues. There were some bilateral exercises on maps. It looked like an exercise somewhere. But at the same time, they asked such questions as how you would do it in this situation, or how you would act in this situation, thereby understanding our logic for completing this task. They are very standard, everything is standardized for them. And if we, for example, use the word decision, made, combat order, then they, for example, have, what do you think? What are the alternative questions? That is, we have different approaches to all these military actions. Ours are more standardized, they are more understandable, and if you made a decision, then it is clear here you made a decision. With them, everything is more like 50-50, as if you thought, and maybe this option would be better. There is something to learn from them. You can learn from them in planning. In planning, there is something to learn from them. In what? In ensuring the process of completing a combat mission, responsibility for your people, perhaps in the organization of setting tasks. In this case, the Baltic states are very worried. Firstly, they have small armies. Secondly, they do not have the same work experience as us. For them, all this is even very strange, and they do not understand how some things work with us.
І деякі речі вони не розуміють, як це працює у нас.
The threat of Russian invasion to other countries is evolving rapidly. Lots of countries like Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia are now thinking about what they're going to do when Russia decides that they want to invade. What would you recommend those countries to learn from Ukrainian experience? What they should do now?
В першу чергу держава повинна звернутися до всього населення, до 100%.
First of all, the state should appeal to the entire population, to 100% of the population, to explain what threat, I don't even mean Russia, in general, a military invasion of their state's territory will pose, so that they all realize they also have the right to leave and go abroad, and so on. Not everyone will rush into the trenches, everyone will start to go somewhere. Well, I don't think so about the Estonian or Latvian nation, but, well, analyzing the situation that developed in Ukraine, at first everyone went to Ukraine in 2022, and then from Ukraine. So I think that, first of all, the nation here should unite, especially since there are very few of them. Ukraine is not big, but still a state of 720 square kilometers. Yes, there are countries of the Baltics that are very small. and they are even geographically located, well, so separately. They border states, but still, the nation will not rise. This is the first thing. Secondly, they must understand how important relations with Ukraine are now, how much Ukraine needs help in order to then have Ukraine as a partner and a friend which already has combat experience, which will easily help the Baltic countries somewhere. And I think that it is also necessary to enlist the support of Europe, although they think for a very long time and figures things out for themselves. The same was with the United States of America, the DS. In the end, they realized that Putin will not finish the war with some conditions or agreements. It's just surprising that people of this level, of course, this is an excuse, they all understand perfectly well why we can only guess. I would say so.
Нам залишається тільки здогадуватись. Сказав би так.
Hello. Hello. Hola. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Hello!
Salut. Hello. Sveiki.
Hello.